I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
I have continued to think a lot about marriage over the course of the last couple of months. And even though we have not been on air very often or very much, marriage is always on my mind. It's in my work. It's at my house. And I do love it. I think it is one of the most amazing gifts that we have. And so we're going to keep talking about it. And today we're going to talk about, I don't like that segue. Let's move on. There are a lot of different kinds of marriages. There are sustainable ones, unsustainable ones, abusive, neglectful, codependent. There are wounded, and there are dead marriages. We have all of these different kinds or types of marriage, and yet it strikes and kind of bothers me that we only have one label or word for marriage, when there seems to be so many different kinds. It almost seems to me that we need a way of speaking about marriages that elevates certain kinds above others. Your parents' marriage was a certain kind, and it would be beneficial if you could classify what that was, what they had, what made it that way, and what kind of marriage you want by contrast. Language doesn't seem to have developed to the point where we can do this kind of distinguishing or calling out what certain types or kinds of marriages we grew up with without maybe sitting in a therapist's office for hours on hours. I believe that the best kind of marriage is a sustainable one. Marriage is meant to last forever. And in order to get to forever, you need a strong system of consistent input, as well as some education around connection, conflict, differences in men and women, sex. You also need commitment and a depth of friendship that you're willing to sacrifice for. Early on in our podcast journey, we pontificated on the basis of this kind of marriage and developed a system that I have been using with couples in my work as a counselor, based on the works of the Gottmans and a few other authors. And if you're interested in reading any of those things, I think you can find most of their books in the show notes, as well as a few other add-on books. So we are going to call the sustainable system kind of marriage, that version of marriage, we're going to kind of classify it as a golden marriage, as it has been refined by fire and suffering, and yet it wills itself forward. It is a precious thing, and it is treated as a precious thing by those who live inside it. Golden is the standard of marriage that we should all strive for. Not that all of our marriages should look the same, but that the principles that tend to sustain people through the torrent of difficulties faced over the course of one's life are definable and practical. Anyone and everyone can practice the principles that make marriage work. These principles are simple, but also difficult to put into practice. Because of the self-sacrificial nature of marriage, putting oneself away so that something greater can take precedence is a part of a golden marriage's daily practice. Principles that give up our time so that we can spend time with our spouse, that give up our comfort or what we want in any given moment in order to see our partners and hear from them. Principles that sacrifice some of our funds for dates and weekends away. Principles that sacrifice some of our brain power and space to consistently communicate appreciation or consistently reach out for affection, even when it's difficult. You'll know a golden marriage when you run into a couple that holds hands and is affectionate with one another with tenderness. Maybe that speaks highly of one another when in public, or that seems to want to be around one another consistently. You'll know a golden marriage when you run into a couple that seems to want to spend a lot of time together, and that friendship remains over many years. You may find a golden couple, a golden marriage that makes time for each other and their dreams throughout their seasons, dates regularly, is warm and forgiving. Looking at Becca and I can immediately tell you that we have some work to do together to achieve a golden kind of marriage. Both of us have grown heaps, leaps, bounds since we became one. Both of us have changed and refined. Both of us are completely exhausted and broken, and we need lots of extra rest and extra grace every day. One of my favorite parts of my job is getting to equip married people, old and young, to sustain and enrich their relationship. Watching couples transform over the course of 9 to 12 months is both a pleasure and a joy. And watching them take hold of their marriage and improve it slowly and sweetly is a primary aim and seems to elevate all of us and provide so much hope for their future. And honestly, just by watching them grow and learn and change, my future as well. If you want a golden marriage, maybe check out some of our earlier episodes. Pick up a book on marriage like 7 Principles That Make Marriage Work. Listen to our episode 52, where we break down the sustainable systems model for marriage that acts as a sort of roadmap for getting couples more deeply connected and sustained. And ultimately, continue to turn toward one another and look at your life and your marriage through the lens of what is going to sustain us. And in fact, what may be getting in the way of us being sustained in our friendship and relationship. Next week, we're most likely going to talk about another kind of marriage, and so we can distinguish golden marriages versus or based on or kind of put up against other kinds. For Becca and I believe we will always be learning and growing in our marriage, and I don't expect that we will arrive very soon. But we are going to continue to strive for creating that golden marriage, not only for us, but also as a representative model for our children. And my hope is that would continue on down the line, that they would create a long line of marriages that will sustain themselves, and that our family tree will continue to grow from this point on in a healthy, connected, sustained manner. And that by doing that, we will be rewriting a lot of the errors and failures and brokenness in our family system and passing down something new, knowing that we aren't passing down perfection, but that we are simply protecting them from one of the biggest and most destructive mistakes or dynamics that one may face, which is the ending of a marriage with potential. Stay tuned for next week, and this is the end.
And I got all I need, and I got everything.